The Russians are trying to gather their strength and launch an offensive in Pokrovsk, Donetsk region. As Ukrainian paratroopers note, the occupiers are attempting to infiltrate the northern part of the city, above the railway, with small assault groups. However, the defense forces are thwarting the plans of the Russian commanders. The enemy is also trying to conduct active operations in the industrial zone on the northwestern outskirts of the city. The goal of the Russian army is to build up forces for further advancement toward Krishna. However, the defense forces are acting proactively, using strike drones and artillery to prevent the enemy from concentrating their troops and equipment or launching offensive actions, from a statement by the 7th Air Assault Corps on Telegram. The Russians continue to amass forces on the approaches to Mirnograd, reports the Vostok troop grouping. In addition, the enemy has intensified attempts to penetrate into the central part of the city.
On our side, there are attempts to improve the logistics of Mirnograd because the situation there is probably more complicated at the moment. At least that's how it looks, because the Russians are also actively attacking here. Again, the goal is to use Mirnohod as a way to get closer to Pokrovsk, and then attack that part of the city from several directions. The part that I remind you still remains under the control of Ukraine's defense forces.
Taking advantage of the weather conditions, Russian troops have also increased pressure on Chasov. Yer and Donetsk region, the invaders are amassing forces and actively using all available types of weapons, including multiple rocket launch systems. This was reported by the 26th Separate Mechanized Brigade, named after King Danilo. Ukrainian defenders continue to hold the city's defenses, and over the past week, the number of eliminated Russian occupiers has doubled.
When it snows, it greatly reduces visibility, and this allows the enemy to gather. It allows the enemy to amass forces and try to infiltrate. That is, in freezing temperatures and clear weather, drones can operate actively, but when it snows, during snowfalls and in poor visibility, it's much harder for drones to operate.
In the Kupiansk direction, the defense forces have seized the tactical initiative from the Russian army, says Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Separate Achilles Unmanned Systems Regiment. He notes that during those times when unmanned systems lose effectiveness due to the weather, they are able to stop enemy equipment, thanks to the strong preparation of the engineering troops.
To make it clear, the orders that dictator Putin gave to his generals, and the generals, in turn, passed on to the troops. They were supposed to capture the left bank bridgehead by October 1st, 2024. Now, it's already 2026, and as you can see, the enemy has not accomplished this task. This is a major success for the defense forces. And it's hard for us because the enemy targets the crossings and can launch up to 60 strikes here in a single day. Guided aerial bombs are dropped on the crossing areas to destroy them.
1,200,000. Russia has lost 20,000 soldiers since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. These are the estimates of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. 1,060 Russian occupiers were eliminated in the past 24 hours. Russian losses in equipment have also increased. In one day, the defense forces destroyed 7 armored vehicles, more than 24 artillery pieces, an air defense system, and 353 drones. The Russian army also lost nearly 100 vehicles.
Pavel Ikachuk, head of military security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21, is joining us live. Pavel, hello.
Good morning, and glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Good afternoon.
Another night of shelling. Indeed, Russia continues. The torture by cold, essentially. As I recently discussed with a military officer, their main analyst right now is the Hydrometeorological Center. What can we say about last night, Pavel? How did you get through it? And how did you experience it? As someone who studies this war,
Just yesterday, the UN Security Council meeting on Russia's shelling of Ukraine with the Oreshnik complex concluded. So I then did. Literally just a few hours later, the Russians launched another ballistic attack on Ukraine, demonstrating not only to us, but to the whole world that they don't care about international law, that they don't care about international organizations. They don't care about the whole world. They want to strangle Ukraine. And these attacks? Under the thick cover of frost, with the unwavering support of the bitter cold, these elements truly serve as their primary and most formidable weapon. The weak link in Ukraine's defense is not at the front. The front is holding, despite the enemy's overwhelming superiority over our defenders, both in terms of manpower, forces, and resources. The front is holding. With the rear is the link the Russians are focusing on, against the backdrop of negotiations, which, whether they lead to a result or not, these so-called peace talks, the rear has become somewhat relaxed, saying, well, what? Now, in 2 months, everything will be over. God willing, there is no point in joining the defense forces. This message is very convenient for Putin's people and in the rear of Ukraine, and they want to push it as much as possible so that Ukrainians themselves would ask for capitulation. That will not happen. And the work of our defense forces in the rear, especially the air defense forces, is a vivid example of that. Yes, and one more thing. While the Russians were bombing our cities and villages, Ukraine's defense forces struck, including in Taganrog, at the factory at the production site of Molnya. Molnya 1. Molnya 2. These are drones, as Konstantin Moshevitz called them. The combat locusts of the Russian occupation army.
However, if we look at the situation, we see that right now, the occupiers are actively trying to put pressure, both at the front and in the rear. We've already talked about the rear. Air raid alerts continue in many regions. We can really see that this is one of the coldest nights of the week. You wouldn't even have to be much of an expert to guess that the Russians would definitely take advantage of this. I'd also like to talk about the FIPT. I noticed in the General Staff's report that the numbers have almost evened out. The number of attacks, the number of assaults in the Pokrovsk and Huliaipole directions. So basically, what's your assessment of what's happening at the front right now?
It's not correct to look at Huliaipole and Pokrovsk together, unlike or separate from those sections of the front where active fighting is taking place. What's happening in Pokrovsk is closely connected to a broad front. To the east, from Lyman in the north, Lyman, Konstantinovka, Pokrovsk in the south. And all of this is part of a single objective. Things have gotten a bit quieter in the Lyman direction. This doesn't mean the enemy has abandoned their objectives. It means things have stalled there, and now they're regrouping to resume operations. Attempts to advance towards Slavyansk, for example. Kostanivka is holding the front. This is a frontal assault, and Pokrovsk-Mernograd, the meat grinder that's happening there. That's the key. In order to outflank our forces from the rear, from the southwest, to complete the encirclement of the entire Seversky Salient. Pokrovsk, despite everything, continues to hold on. Some might call it a decrease in the number of clashes, but that's not so much due to the enemy weakening as it is a result of our own defense forces being depleted. If you take a comprehensive look at all of these elements combined, including all these various directions, and carefully observe and analyze the total number of clashes, then compare it to exactly what is happening in the south, and that's not just from the area of Huliaipole, but extending all the way to the Arakiv direction, then yes, it becomes clear that the enemy has really significantly intensified their military operations and tactical activity here. They have been active throughout all the previous months as well, continuing their offensive from Kurukhov through Novopavlivske and up to Huliaipole, moving from east to west. And at the same time, now they are trying to storm from the front, from the south, trying to bypass Orikhiv. In this way, you can see their plan taking shape, delivering flanking strikes just like they wanted to do in the east. This is a serious threat. It could even be an attempt to completely redirect the strategic focus of their primary offensive operations, because in the east, their plan is currently failing to materialize as they had originally envisioned to implement it.
Pavel, fighters from the 2nd Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, Kartea, have taken control of the city council building in Kupiansk, Kharkiv region. Right now, the city is being cleared of occupiers. As the military notes, the Kupiansk operation is going successfully, thanks to careful planning and the coordinated work of staff, commanders, as well as the high-quality training of the units. Here we see filage from Kupiansk. What are your comments on this success and its significance?
From the very beginning, the Russian operation in the Kupiansk direction was not aimed against Kupiansk itself, but against Kupiansk as a key junction from Kupiansk. It's a settlement, a railway junction, that's very important to us. It connects things with the Kharkiv direction, with Sosnovo, and it's important for the Russians too. If captured, it creates a route to the north, through Volodchiki, to the Belgorod and Voronezh regions. But it so happened that the Russian command and Putin personally have repeatedly declared the capture of Kupiansk. And now, this city, the town, doesn't have military political significance. Not military significance, but specifically political significance. Capturing it would justify or confirm Putin's words that a revolt like in the Kupiansk direction will happen everywhere. Because right now, it means the opposite compared to what the Russian dictator intended.
Tell me, Pavel, there's also this information. We'll talk about it in more detail afternoon, but I just wanted to clarify with you. So the UK's plans to provide us with ballistic weapons. We've been talking about this for so long. We've been waiting for this for such a long time. So this time, after such a demonstration, is there a chance for us to expect this engineering defense solution from one of our key allies?
For now, the British are talking about developing a ballistic missile for Ukraine, and it's hard to say how long that'll take. They haven't developed one for themselves, or rather they started, but then basically abandoned the process. By developing missiles for Ukraine, they are resuming and restoring technological and design processes, including for themselves. How long will it take to develop this weapon? It's definitely not a matter of weeks or months. Let me remind you, for HIMARS, the Americans, under the previous administration, the team proposed developing a highly efficient and rapidly deployable alternative solution for modern munitions in this specific form. A specialized carrier vehicle, plus a high-yield aerial bomb, plus a sophisticated electronic guidance system. That development process took quite a long and arduous period of time to complete. How long will it actually take for this innovative British idea to reach full operational capacity? It's hard to predict, but the fact that the British have taken this on is a plus, both for them and for us.